Captain Tom Wilson stood at the bridge of the ESS Discovery, his eyes fixed on the massive structure floating in space before them. After 6 months of deep space exploration, they had finally found something extraordinary, though not quite in the way they had expected. "Is that a disco ball?" Lieutenant Roberts asked, squinting at the massive space station that sparkled and rotated slowly in the darkness of space. The station was covered in what appeared to be highly polished mirrors, sending rainbow reflections across the Discovery's view screen. "It's the biggest station I've ever seen," Officer Jones said from her console, "but why does it look like someone bedazzled it?" Before Captain Wilson could respond, the communication console lit up with a series of musical chimes. The crew exchanged puzzled looks as the sounds continued for nearly a minute, forming what seemed to be an elaborate tune. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer Pete announced, trying to keep his voice professional despite his growing amusement. They're requesting visual contact using interpretive dance signals." Wilson straightened his uniform. "Well, let's not keep them waiting." On screen, the main view screen flickered to life, and the bridge crew collectively bit their lips to hold back their reactions. On the screen stood 3 aliens, each wearing what looked like a combination of a Christmas tree and a chandelier. Their bodies were long and thin, covered in iridescent robes that seemed to change color with every movement. The alien in the center raised all 4 of its arms and began to spin in place. "Greetings, unknown vessel," it announced in a sing-song voice. "We are the representatives of the most esteemed and choreographically advanced Galactic Council." Each word was accompanied by an elaborate gesture that sent the alien's costume jingling. Wilson glanced at his crew, noticing Officer Jones stuffing her fist in her mouth to stop from laughing. He cleared his throat. "This is Captain Tom Wilson of the Earth ship Discovery. We come in peace and friendship." The aliens gasped in perfect harmony. You just stood there," the lead alien exclaimed, horrified. "Where is your greeting dance? Your ceremonial spin? Your dignity hat?" "Our what?" Wilson asked, feeling increasingly like he was in some sort of cosmic joke. "This is most irregular." The second alien began to hop from one foot to another in what appeared to be distress. "All proper civilizations communicate through the sacred art of movement. Quick, Counselor Bob, we must perform the emergency first contact ballet." Counselor Bob. Wilson had to bite his tongue at the surprisingly ordinary name, immediately launched into what looked like a cross between a pirouette and a seizure. The other 2 aliens joined in, creating a synchronized display of twirling and arm-waving that made the bridge crew's eyes water from holding in their laughter. "We welcome you," they sang in 3-part harmony, "to the realm of the Galactic Council." Their performance included jazz hands. Lieutenant Roberts had to leave the bridge, his shoulders shaking with suppressed mirth. Officer Jones was typing frantically at her console, and Wilson knew she was already composing messages to Earth that would turn this into the biggest meme of the century. In accordance with Protocol 7249 Dance B, the lead alien continued, still spinning, "You must now demonstrate your species' ceremonial greeting sequence." Wilson looked at his remaining crew members, their faces red from contained laughter. He stood up, straightened his uniform, and did the only thing he could think of. He gave a simple military salute. The aliens stopped mid-twirl, their expressions a mixture of shock and horror. But where is the flourish, the elegant movement, the symbolic representation of your cultural essence through interpretive dance? "We prefer to keep things simple," Wilson managed to say with a straight face. The lead alien fainted dead away, its dignity hat tinkling as it hit the floor. The other 2 immediately began the ceremonial dance of emergency medical assistance, which looked suspiciously like the chicken dance. As Wilson watched the chaos unfold on the screen, he realized that humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council was going to be remembered for centuries, just not for the reasons anyone would have expected. He just hoped Earth's diplomats knew how to dance. After the eventful first contact, the ESS Discovery's crew found themselves docking at the giant disco ball-like space station. Captain Wilson led his delegation through the sparkly corridors, accompanied by Lieutenant Roberts and Officer Jones. They tried their best to maintain serious expressions as they followed a floating guidebot that played elevator music and occasionally burst into what appeared to be robot tap dancing. "The Grand Council chamber awaits," chimed the guidebot, spinning in circles. "Please ensure your dignity hats are properly aligned." The humans stared at the objects they'd been given upon arrival. The dignity hats looked like upside-down ice cream cones covered in blinking lights and tiny bells that chimed with every step. "Put them on," Wilson whispered to his crew. "And remember, this is a diplomatic mission." They entered the grand chamber, a massive circular room with walls that changed colors like a lava lamp. Hundreds of alien species sat in tiered seats, all wearing increasingly ridiculous headgear and swaying in unison to inaudible music. The lead counselor from their earlier communication, now recovered from his fainting spell, stood at the center. "Welcome, humans. We shall now begin the ceremony of new species integration. First, the traditional handstanding." "The what now?" Lieutenant Roberts whispered. "All civilized species conduct diplomatic relations while inverted," explained the counselor. "It allows the brain fluid to properly distribute wisdom." Wilson looked at his crew, shrugged, and attempted a handstand against the wall. Officer Jones, thanks to her yoga practice, managed a wobbly handstand. Lieutenant Roberts fell flat on his face. "No, no, no," the counselor wailed. "You must recite the poem of peaceful intentions while inverted, in rhyming verse." Wilson, his face turning red both from embarrassment and blood rush, attempted to improvise. Humans come in peace today. We hope that we can find a way." "Stop," shrieked another council member, their dignity hat jingling in distress. "That was only 2 lines. The poem of peaceful intentions must be exactly 17 stanzas long, each accompanied by interpretive toe wiggling." Officer Jones lost her balance and collapsed in a fit of giggles. The council gasped in perfect synchronization. "Perhaps," suggested a third counselor, "we should proceed to the sacred snack ritual instead." The humans watched in bewilderment as floating trays of what looked like glowing jello appeared. Each council member began an elaborate series of movements before eating, including spinning 3 times, bowing to the snack, and serenading it with a short opera. "You must honor the nutrient cubes properly," insisted the lead counselor. "Begin with the dance of gratitude." Lieutenant Roberts picked up a glowing cube. "Can't we just say thank you and eat it?" The chamber fell silent. Someone dropped their dignity hat. "Just eat it," whispered the horrified counselor. Without performing the traditional snack appreciation interpretive dance series, without even a simple 40-minute gratitude meditation. "Well, yeah," said Roberts, popping the cube into his mouth. "Hey, this tastes like grape." Several council members fainted. Others began performing what appeared to be an emergency ritual involving hopping on one leg while patting their heads. "The humans are contaminating the sacred snack ritual," someone shouted. "Quick, perform the dance of cleansing." The entire chamber erupted into chaos as hundreds of aliens began an uncoordinated mass of ritual movements. Dignity hats flew everywhere. The walls flashed faster, turning the room into a cosmic disco. Captain Wilson watched the pandemonium unfold, his own dignity hat tilted askew. "I don't suppose," he murmured to his crew, "that anyone recorded this for Earth." Officer Jones grinned, pointing to her uniform's camera. "Every second, sir. This is going to break the internet." As the council members continued their frenzied dancing, Wilson realized that interstellar diplomacy was going to be very different from what anyone had expected. He just hoped Earth's diplomatic course included a dance instructor. Above them, the guidebot continued to tap dance, completely oblivious to the chaos below. After the snack ritual disaster, Captain Wilson and his crew found themselves in what the council called the Chamber of Sacred Knowledge, but what looked suspiciously like a glitter-covered library. A tall alien with 7 arms approached them, pushing a floating cart loaded with thick books. "These," announced the alien librarian in a musical tone, "are the basic rules and regulations of the Galactic Council." Volume 1 of 900. The humans stared at the mountain of books. Each one was bigger than a phone book and seemed to glow with a faint purple light. "Remember," the librarian continued, "each rule must be sung in the correct tone." For example, the alien cleared all 3 of its throats and began to sing in an opera voice. Section 1. Rule 1. All species must hop counterclockwise when entering any council chamber during the 3rd moon of their home planet's cycle. Officer Jones raised her hand. "Quick question. What if our planet only has 1 moon?" The librarian froze mid-song. Its eye stalks twisted in confusion. 1 moon. How uncivilized. "Quick, we must consult the emergency appendix for primitive species." It pulled out another massive book and began frantically flipping pages while humming anxiously. Lieutenant Roberts picked up one of the rule books and opened it randomly. Rule 3427. All space weapons must be powered by interpretive dance moves. The more elegant the dance, the more powerful the weapon. "You're joking," Wilson said, looking over his shoulder. "I wish I was, sir." Roberts turned the page. "Look, there's even a diagram. Apparently, a perfect pirouette can power a small battleship." The librarian stopped its humming. "Of course. How else would one power weapons? Don't tell me you humans use something as barbaric as technology." "Well, actually," Wilson began. Shrieked the librarian, doing a distressed twirl. "Quick, we must perform the dance of technology cleansing." It began to hop on 1 foot while waving its many arms in complex patterns. While the librarian was distracted, Officer Jones flipped through another rulebook. "Sir," she whispered, trying not to laugh, "according to this, we've broken at least 50 rules just by walking in straight lines. Apparently, all civilized species move in zigzags to honor the cosmic dance of the universe." The librarian, finishing its cleansing dance, composed itself. "Now we must proceed to the most important section. Proper protocol for filing paperwork in triplicate through interpretive movement." Just then, the station's lights flickered. A mechanical voice announced, "Warning, primary power core experiencing rhythmic irregularities. All species please prepare for the emergency power restoration dance." The librarian looked panicked. "Oh no. The station's core dancers must be out of sync. This could take weeks to fix through proper ceremonial channels." Captain Wilson glanced at his crew. "Maybe we could take a look. We have some engineering experience." "Impossible," the librarian gasped. "The power core is sacred. Only those who have completed the 17-year dance of engineering mastery may approach it." Officer Jones pulled out a simple wrench from her toolkit. "Or we could just try fixing it the human way." "What is that primitive tool?" the librarian asked, its eye stalks curling in horror. "Where are your ceremonial engineering ribbons? Your power core communion robes?" Before the librarian could stop them, Jones walked to the nearest access panel, opened it, and gave the machinery inside one solid whack with her wrench. The lights immediately stabilized. The librarian fainted dead away, all 7 arms twitching in distress. "You know," Wilson said, looking at the unconscious librarian and the mountain of rulebooks, "somehow I don't think we're going to fit in very well here." Roberts grinned. "Should we tell them about our other barbaric practices, like using screwdrivers, or reading instruction manuals without first performing a ceremonial dance?" "Let's save something for tomorrow," Wilson replied, carefully stepping over the librarian. "Though I can't wait to see their reaction when they learn about duct tape." As they left the Chamber of Sacred Knowledge, the rulebooks continued to glow faintly, and somewhere in the distance, They could hear the sound of the council's maintenance crew practicing their emergency repair ballet. The council's emergency response committee gathered for their daily meeting, which naturally began with a 3-hour synchronized swimming session in zero gravity. The topic of discussion: the increasingly problematic humans. "They're just so practical," complained head counselor Bob, his ceremonial robes still dripping from the swimming ritual. Yesterday, one of them fixed the food replicator by pressing buttons, without even performing the traditional button-pressing dance. In the corner of the chamber, Captain Wilson and his crew sat watching the proceedings, trying their best to look properly ashamed of their efficiency. They failed miserably. "Even worse," chirped another counselor, their dignity hat flashing in distress. They introduced something called coffee to the station's restaurant. The chamber filled with horrified gasps. "What's wrong with coffee?" Lieutenant Roberts whispered to Officer Jones. Before she could answer, a small alien with tentacles rushed into the chamber, skipping the mandatory entry pirouette entirely. "Emergency, emergency," the station's maintenance staff. There, speak, after performing the proper dance of urgent news," demanded head counselor Bob. "There's no time," the alien wailed. "The maintenance staff is drinking human coffee and getting things done." The council erupted into chaos. Several members began performing the dance of panic, which looked remarkably like the Macarena gone wrong. "It's true," the small alien continued. "They fixed the waste recycling system in just 2 hours instead of the ceremonial 3 weeks. They didn't even perform the sacred plumbing meditation." Captain Wilson stood up. "Is fixing things quickly really such a problem?" "Problem." Head counselor Bob's voice rose to a squeaky pitch. "Do you realize what this efficiency could do to our carefully structured society? Our 17-step process for changing light bulbs. Our mandatory waiting periods for filling out forms. Our interpretive dance-based economy." Just then, the station shuddered. The lights flickered ominously. "The main reactor," someone shouted. "It's destabilizing. Quick, we must form the Emergency Reactor Repair Committee, schedule their first interpretive dance session, and approve their choreography through proper channels." "How long will that take?" Wilson asked. "Only 6 to 8 weeks, head counselor Bob replied proudly. "We've streamlined the process." Another violent shudder rocked the station. Officer Jones pulled out her tablet, quickly scanning the reactor's readings. "Sir, we have maybe 10 minutes before this whole place goes critical." Wilson looked at the council members, who were now performing an elaborate group dance to summon the spirit of bureaucratic guidance. "With all due respect," he said loudly, "we can fix this now if you'll let us." But the proper forms," sputtered head counselor Bob. "The ceremonial permissions, the interpretive safety briefing." Another shake. Warning lights began flashing. "Your choice," Wilson said firmly. "Proper channels or a working station." The council huddled together, performing a quick decision-making square dance. Finally, head counselor Bob turned back, looking defeated. "Very well. Do it the human way." Wilson nodded to Officer Jones, who was already heading for the door. "Roberts, with me. Let's show them how humans handle emergencies." 5 minutes later, through a combination of actual engineering, duct tape, and what Roberts called percussive maintenance, hitting things with a wrench, the reactor stabilized. The council members watched in stunned silence as the humans returned, slightly greasy but successful. "Fixed it," Jones announced cheerfully. "You might want to think about regular maintenance instead of waiting for interpretive dance approval next time." "This is unprecedented," head counselor Bob whispered. "No ceremonial dances, no proper paperwork, not even a single ritual chant. Just wait until they discover what humans call coffee breaks," a voice muttered from the crowd. Wilson smiled diplomatically. "Now about those regulation changes we suggested." The council collectively shuddered, but they couldn't argue with results, even if those results came without proper ceremonial observation. In the station's cafe, a long line of aliens had formed, all trying to secretly order something called an espresso. The barista, wearing a dignity hat at a rebellious angle, had never been busier. The human revolution of practical solutions had begun. No dancing required. The grand cultural exchange hall of the council station sparkled with extra glitter today. After the reactor incident, the council had decided to better understand these strange, efficient humans through an official cultural exchange program. Captain Wilson stood on the presentation stage, facing hundreds of aliens from different species. Behind him was a simple screen displaying Earth Culture 101. Today, Head Counselor Bob announced, performing the mandatory pre-presentation spin, the humans will share their cultural practices. Please maintain proper ceremonial posture during the demonstration. Wilson cleared his throat. We thought we'd start with something simple, how humans celebrate and have fun. Lieutenant Roberts, if you would. Roberts stepped forward and pressed a button. The speakers began playing the cha-cha slide. This, Wilson explained, is what we call a party dance. Everyone can join in. The song tells you what to do. The aliens watched in horror as the humans demonstrated, following the simple commands. Slide to the left, slide to the right, crisscross. But where is the deeper meaning? One alien cried out. The spiritual significance. The 17 layers of ceremonial importance. It's just for fun, Officer Jones explained, doing the crisscross. Come on, try it. A young alien tentatively stepped forward, then another. Soon, a small group was attempting to follow along, their dignity hats jingling with each step. This is oddly enjoyable, admitted a tall, purple alien, sliding to the left. Even without proper ceremonial preparation, Head Counselor Bob looked like he might faint. Next presentation, quickly. Wilson nodded. Here's another Earth tradition. The Casual Friday. What sacred ceremony must one perform to achieve casualness? Asked an alien in the front row, taking notes. None, Wilson replied. You just wear comfortable clothes and relax a bit at work. The room fell silent. Even the constant background humming of ceremonial energy stopped. Work, without proper formal attire. Head Counselor Bob whispered in shock. Without the morning robe blessing dance, without the sacred tie straightening ritual. Yep. Wilson loosened his collar. Sometimes we even wear jeans. 3 council members fainted on the spot. Another began performing the dance of spiritual crisis. But there's more. Roberts said enthusiastically. We also have something called a high five. The humans demonstrated the simple celebration gesture. The aliens watched in fascination as Roberts and Jones slapped hands. A ritual of victory with only one movement. Someone gasped. Impossible. A brave alien in the back raised a tentacle. Could we try this high five? What followed was 30 minutes of aliens attempting to high-five each other with various appendages, creating chaos as dignity hats flew everywhere. Some species with multiple arms attempted to high-five themselves, while floating blob-like aliens simply bumped into each other enthusiastically. And finally, Wilson announced, we'd like to introduce you to something we call the wave. The humans demonstrated, standing and raising their arms in sequence. The aliens, now throwing proper ceremony to the wind, joined in eagerly. The wave circled the room once, twice, then 3 times, picking up speed. This is most irregular. Head Counselor Bob shouted over the growing excitement. Where is the proper procedural documentation? The ceremonial preparation? The ritualistic? He was cut off as a junior council member grabbed him and pulled him into the wave. To everyone's surprise, Bob's dignity hat flew off, and a small smile appeared on his face. Perhaps, he admitted, as the wave continued around the room, some human traditions have their merits. In the back of the room, Officer Jones was teaching a group of aliens the YMCA dance, while Roberts had started a conga line that wound through the halls of the station. The sound of laughter, both human and alien, echoed through the normally ceremonial chambers. Wilson watched it all with satisfaction. Sometimes the best diplomacy didn't need complicated ceremonies or elaborate rituals. Sometimes it just needed a good party. Though he did wonder how the council would react tomorrow when they learned about karaoke. The emergency alarms blared throughout the station, but for once, no one was performing the traditional alert response dance. On the main view screen, a fleet of dark ships approached the council space. The Void Crushers, head counselor Bob announced, his dignity hat trembling. They've returned after 1,000 years. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Various species began different emergency rituals simultaneously, creating a bizarre mix of dances and ceremonial chants. "We must begin the ancient defense preparation ceremony immediately," one counselor shouted. "It only takes 6 months to complete." Captain Wilson, who had been watching the approaching fleet on the screens, cleared his throat. 6 months. Those ships will be here in about 6 hours. But the ceremony, Bob protested. The proper steps, the ritualistic weapon-charging dances. "How about we try something different?" Wilson suggested, "like actually fighting back." The council gasped in perfect unison. "You mean combat without proper ceremonial preparation?" Bob looked faint. "That's never been done." Just then, the main screen crackled to life. A dark figure appeared, its voice booming through the chamber. "Pathetic council species, we have returned to claim what is ours. Prepare for your ceremonial doom." The figure paused, clearly expecting the council to begin their traditional response to threats dance. Instead, Wilson stepped forward. "Yeah, how about no?" he said simply. The dark figure seemed taken aback. "What? Where is the ritual of frightened submission? The dance of impending defeat?" "Sorry," Wilson replied. "We're trying something new today. Roberts, show them what humans think of ceremonial doom." Lieutenant Roberts, who had been quietly working at a console, pressed a button. Suddenly, AC/DCs, back in black, began blasting through all station speakers. The council members covered their hearing organs in shock. "What is this barbaric noise?" the dark figure demanded. "This," Wilson grinned, "is what we call getting pumped up for battle. Officer Jones, are the modifications to the station's defense systems ready?" Jones gave a thumbs up from her station. She had spent the last hour bypassing the ceremonial weapon activation sequences and rerouting power directly to the defense grid. "Ready, sir. No interpretive dance required." The Void Crusher leader seemed completely confused by this lack of proper protocol. You can't just skip the ceremonies. It's not proper. We demand you follow the ancient traditions of combat." "Here's a human tradition for you," Wilson said, nodding to Jones. "It's called shooting first." The station's weapons fired, their power boosted by human engineering rather than interpretive dance. The lead Void Crusher ship spun away, its shields failing. "This is impossible," the dark figure shouted. "Where is the ritual of targeting? The sacred firing formation dance?" "Keep that music playing, Roberts," Wilson commanded. "Jones, show them some more human traditions." The human-modified defense systems continued firing, while Back in Black echoed through space. The Void Crushers, completely thrown off by this complete lack of proper combat ceremony, began to retreat in disarray. "You haven't seen the last of us," their leader threatened, though he seemed more offended by the lack of ceremony than anything else. "We'll return once you've learned proper combat etiquette." As the dark ships fled, the council chamber fell silent except for the fading notes of AC/DC. Head Counselor Bob stared at the humans in a mixture of horror and amazement. "You just fought them, without any ceremonies, without even a single ritual combat dance." "Sometimes," Wilson said, straightening his jacket, "the best ceremony is no ceremony at all." But, Bob stammered, then looked at the battle readings. "You defeated them in under 10 minutes. The fastest ceremonial combat in history took 3 weeks. Efficiency, Jones said with a grin. It's kind of our thing. The council members huddled together, whispering frantically. Finally, Bob turned back to the humans. Perhaps, he admitted reluctantly, there are times when the human way has certain advantages. Don't worry, Wilson assured him. You can always do the victory dance afterward. And for the first time in council history, they celebrated a victory with both traditional ceremonial dances and human high fives. Though some council members were secretly starting to prefer the high fives. 1 month after the Void Crusher incident, the Grand Council chamber looked very different. While dignity hats still sparkled and ceremonial robes still swished, something had definitely changed. Captain Wilson noticed it immediately as he entered for the final treaty signing. Some council members were walking in straight lines. Welcome to this most auspicious occasion, Head Councilor Bob announced, performing only a single spin instead of the traditional 17. Today we formalize humanity's unique position within the Galactic Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every species. In the back, Wilson spotted several aliens trying to secretly drink coffee while performing their ceremonial duties. One even attempted a subtle high five with a colleague. After much deliberation, Bob continued, and only 3 ceremonial dances instead of the usual 47. We have created a new category of membership, the Practical Partners Protocol. Wilson exchanged glances with Roberts and Jones. They had spent weeks negotiating this, mostly by showing the council how much more they could accomplish without spending hours on ceremonial preparations. Bob unrolled a glowing scroll. By order of the Grand Council, humans are hereby granted special dispensation to 2. He gulped, get things done without proper ceremonial observation. The chamber erupted in a mixture of gasps and relieved sighs. Several younger council members actually applauded, a scandalously ceremonial-free gesture they'd learned from the humans. Furthermore, Bob added, humans will serve as the council's official problem solvers. He whispered the last part like it was slightly dirty. When efficiency is required over ceremony, the humans shall be called. What about the rule books? Someone shouted from the crowd. Yes, Bob nodded, performing a minor twirl. The 17 million regulations regarding proper ceremonial procedures shall remain in place, with a new addendum, unless the humans have a better idea. Officer Jones leaned over to Wilson and whispered, did we just become the galaxy's handyman? More like its emergency efficiency experts, Wilson whispered back. Could be worse. Bob cleared his throat. We have also adopted certain human innovations. He pressed a button on his podium. And to everyone's surprise, it just worked. No ritual of button activation required. Maintenance times have decreased by 99%, Bob admitted. Emergency response now takes minutes instead of months. And he looked around furtively. I must confess, these coffee breaks are rather invigorating. A small cheer went up from the maintenance staff in the corner, who had already replaced their ceremonial tool belts with practical ones. However, Bob straightened his dignity hat. We shall maintain our traditional values. There will still be ceremonies, still be dances. He paused, just maybe not for changing light bulbs. Wilson stepped forward. The Earth delegation accepts these terms. We're honored to be your efficiency consultants. Excellent. Bob clapped his hands. Now, let us seal this treaty with the traditional dance of document signing. Or, Wilson suggested gently, we could just sign it. Bob looked scandalized for a moment, then thoughtful. Perhaps we could do both. A smaller dance, then signing, with maybe 1 or 2 high fives. Progress, Roberts whispered, grinning. As they completed the slightly shortened treaty ceremony, Wilson looked around the chamber. Young aliens were teaching their elders about casual Fridays. The maintenance crew was explaining the concept of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, to fascinated scholars. Someone had even started a small conga line in the celebration afterward. You know, Head Counselor Bob said quietly to Wilson, adjusting his dignity hat to a slightly relaxed angle. "When you humans first arrived, we thought you were complete barbarians." "And now?" Wilson asked. "Now we know you're complete barbarians," Bob replied with a small smile. "But perhaps the galaxy needed a few barbarians. Just don't tell anyone I said that without performing the proper ritual of secret sharing." Wilson laughed and offered a high five. After a quick glance around, Bob returned it, his dignity hat jingling happily. The galaxy would never be quite the same, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Sometimes the best traditions were the new ones you made along the way, with or without ceremonial dances. Though Wilson had to admit, the dances were growing on him, just a little.